She agrees to go on a date with the most rejected man in the company to avoid spending New Year alone. But by the end of the night, she discovers that the fluorescent hum of the office was a familiar, monotonous lullaby to 27-year-old Eleanor Vance. But on this particular New Year's Eve, it felt more like a mocking echo. As she watched her colleagues, Sarah from marketing, Ben from accounting, even the perpetually grumpy Mr. Henderson, scurry out with cheerful goodbyes and plans for lavish parties or cozy gatherings, a heavy silence settled in her cubicle. Her phone, a cold slab of glass and metal, offered no solace. The group chats were buzzing with a million arrangements she wasn't a part of. She scrolled through them, a knot tightening in her stomach. "I'm spending New Year's with my cat," she muttered to herself, but the lie felt hollow. She loved her cat, Bartholomew, but a night of Netflix and cat cuddles wasn't the grand, hopeful start to a new year she had envisioned. She wanted fireworks and a countdown with another human being. She wanted a story to tell on Monday morning. Her gaze drifted across the nearly empty office, landing on the last remaining soul. Arthur Finch. A man who was, by unspoken company consensus, the most rejected man in the entire building. Arthur was the kind of person who seemed to exist perpetually on the periphery. His clothes were ill-fitting, his spectacles thick, and his hair, a wild, untamable mop, always looked like he had just been electrocuted. He was brilliant with spreadsheets and algorithms, a fact no one could deny, but his social graces were non-existent. He'd once tried to make a joke about the company's new coffee machine and ended up spilling his lukewarm latte all over the CFO's new shoes. He was the subject of whispers, of averted gazes, and of polite but firm rejections whenever he tried to join a conversation. A sudden, desperate, and frankly ridiculous idea sparked in Eleanor's mind, a flicker of hope born from pure, unadulterated desperation. Going on a date with Arthur Finch for New Year's was a terrible idea. It was embarrassing. It was a sign of rock bottom. But it was also a date. It was a person to share the countdown with. She took a deep breath, stood up, and marched towards his cubicle before she could talk herself out of it. Arthur was hunched over his monitor, a cascade of code scrolling across the screen. "Hey, Arthur," she said, her voice a little too loud in the quiet office. He startled, his head snapping up so fast his glasses nearly flew off his face. "Eleanor, hello. Is everything all right?" "Everything's great," she lied smoothly, pasting on a smile. "Listen, I know this is super last minute, but do you have plans for New Year's Eve?" His bushy eyebrows shot up. "Plans?" "Oh, no, I was planning to debug a new piece of software. It's a very robust plan." She winced internally. "Well, that sounds productive," she said. "But what if we went out for dinner to celebrate? You know, before you dive into the debugging." Arthur's mouth opened and closed a few times, like a fish out of water. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, and for a fleeting second, Eleanor saw a glint in his eyes she hadn't noticed before. A glimmer of something sharp and intelligent, quickly replaced by his usual bewildered expression. "A date with me?" he stammered. "Yes," she said, her smile starting to feel a little strained. "It's New Year's. We should go out, have a nice meal. It'll be fun." He seemed to process the words slowly, as if she were speaking an ancient dialect. Finally, he nodded. "Okay. Yes. That would be a change of pace. I would like that very much." He gave her an address for the following night, a place she didn't recognize, and she left the office, a strange mixture of relief and regret swirling in her gut. She'd done it. She had a New Year's date with Arthur Finch. She spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous apprehension, wondering what on earth she had gotten herself into. The next evening, Eleanor stood in front of a sleek, unassuming entrance on a quiet, exclusive street she never knew existed. The address Arthur had given her led to a place called the Gilded Compass, and as the doors were opened for her by a liveried doorman, She felt wildly out of place in her simple dress. The interior was a breathtaking display of understated elegance, dark wood paneling, low lighting, and the distant melodic strains of a jazz trio. Her mind raced. What did Arthur Finch know about a place like this? He probably just found it on a list of the city's most expensive restaurants. He's going to order a hot dog and embarrass me. She took a deep breath and gave her name to the host. "Ah, Miss Vance, Mr. Finch is waiting for you at the private table." "Private table?" Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. The host led her through the opulent dining room, past tables of people she recognized from tabloids and society magazines. She was almost numb with disbelief when they stopped in front of a secluded booth, curtained off for privacy. And then she saw him. He was waiting for her, standing as she approached. But it wasn't the Arthur Finch she knew. The thick glasses were gone. His hair was impeccably styled, falling in a way that framed a face with sharp, handsome angles she had never noticed. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that hugged his broad shoulders and emphasized a physique that had been completely hidden by his baggy work clothes. He looked less like a nerdy accountant and more like a Greek god who had been slumming it in a tech company for a bet. He smiled, and it wasn't the nervous, lopsided grimace she was used to. It was a warm, confident, and utterly charming smile that reached his eyes, which, without the thick lenses, were a stunning, clear shade of blue. "Eleanor," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that was nothing like his usual nervous squeak. "I'm so glad you came." Eleanor felt her jaw go slack. She stood there, frozen, trying to reconcile the confident man in front of her with the clumsy coworker she had asked out less than 24 hours ago. "Arthur," she finally managed to whisper, Is that really you?" He chuckled, a rich sound that made her heart flutter. "In the flesh. I understand this might be a little surprising." They sat down, and as they did, a waiter appeared immediately with a bottle of champagne and 2 flutes. He spoke to Arthur with a deference that shocked Eleanor. "You've been pretending?" she asked, the words tumbling out. "In a way," he admitted. "You see, my father is the founder of the company. I'm his son. I took a few years off after college to travel, to figure things out for myself. He gave me an ultimatum. Come back and take a real look at the company, or forfeit my position in the succession line. So, I went in undercover. I wanted to see how things really ran. To understand the people, the culture, the inner workings, without anyone treating me differently because of who I am." Eleanor's mind reeled. The spills, the awkward jokes, the thick glasses. It was all an act. An incredibly convincing, and now, slightly infuriating one. Why the disguise?" she asked. "If I had shown up looking like this, in tailored suits, everyone would have treated me differently. People see what they expect to see. I wanted to see who would be kind, who would be genuine, and who would just ignore the invisible man. I saw how people reacted to the most awkward person in the office. It was enlightening." He paused, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "You, Eleanor, were one of the few who were always kind. You smiled at me in the hallways. You asked about my weekend even when I gave you an incredibly boring answer. When I spilled coffee on the CFO, you were the first person to bring me a new napkin." A blush crept up her cheeks. "And you asked me out to dinner," he continued, a genuine, hopeful look on his face. "To be fair, I was just as desperate to find a genuine connection. I was prepared to spend New Year's alone too. But you for some reason saw past the glasses and the bad haircut." Eleanor stared at him, her initial embarrassment fading into a profound sense of awe. She had asked him out for purely selfish reasons, to avoid being alone. But in doing so, she had stumbled into the most incredible story of her life. She was on a date with the handsome, charming, and secretly powerful heir to the company, and he had chosen her because she had been nice to the awkward guy everyone else ignored. As the jazz music swelled, he reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm and steady. "Happy New Year's, Eleanor," he said, his blue eyes sparkling. She squeezed his hand back, a genuine, joyful smile spreading across her face. "Happy New Year's, Arthur." And as the clock struck midnight and the fireworks erupted outside, he leaned across the table and kissed her. It was a kiss that promised not just a new year, but a brand new, entirely unexpected story. Her phone vibrated in her purse, but she didn't even think to look at it. She finally had a story worth telling, and it was just beginning.